our invested companies think about our intervention and why it's so important in Nepal. So before we do that, let me just, how do I play this? How do I play this?
The video?
Oh. Yeah.
Energy as a service was the core idea behind starting Saragota. View2 investment came exactly at the time when we were about to implement PPA model, renewable energy as a service model, where we'd have to invest heavily upfront. Besides the investment, whatever they brought to the table was good, and we're following it, and our management practice has changed.
काम गर्दाखेरि समुदायको उन्नति हेरेर चाहिँ मेरो व्यक्तिगत तौरमा पनि परिवर्तन भएको छ। मलाई यो रोजगारी पाइसकेपछि चाहिँ अरू खर्च छुट्याएर त्यहाँ चाहिँ लगानी गरिरहेको छु सानो पसल पनि।
Resort actually developed organically as we saw the need for better accommodation for our own guests from around the world. We practice responsible tourism that can be replicated in other parts of the Himalayas. One of the things that VO2 has really helped is to bring in corporate governance into the project. We are a family business, and so when you're running a family business, a lot of things are left rather casual, and the way forward is always for corporate governance, especially when you have so many lodges to run.
Bringing our home cooked food to customers. So that's how we started Dalle. Since VO2 came in, they've helped us with the central kitchen, which was very important at that time, and we've grown in numbers from 3 to 10 outlets, and we hope to grow even bigger. We're trying to hire at least 30% female employees. 90% of our staff go to college. SMEs are vital for economies like Nepal. However, this segment is the most neglected. They lack access to capital because they don't have security to give to the bank, so they haven't been able to scale up. That's where Business Oxygen has come in to provide that much needed capital as well as the technical expertise. Majority of the SMEs in Nepal have traditional management practices. Therefore, with our entry into them, we'd like to see them grow not only in their balance sheets, but making sure that they are in compliance with the rules of the law, as well as in compliance with family smart approaches.
Okay, that pretty much gives you a preliminary introduction to what we do. Now, what is private equity? Private equity is a new, well, it's been about 10 years in Nepal now, but prior to that, it was a new concept. Internationally, it's not a new concept. It is It is a very old method of investing into projects. Private equity is equity, basically. You invest risk capital into a project, and then you handhold that project until you exit it with a profit. Okay? Prior to the entry of private equity in Nepal, the only recourse that people had in their businesses was debt financing or the curb market, 30% interest, which was really very, very difficult for many of the entrepreneurs to scale up, especially in Nepal, where debt is not given if you do not have a collateral, if you don't have security, so you're shunted. There's that glass ceiling that needed to be broken. So back in 2015, IFC, with its global SME Ventures program, was expanding all over. I think in Asia we were the third when BO2 was started by us. The whole intention was to target the missing middle. Now, who are the missing middle? The missing middle are the people who do not have the ability to go to a bank to get capital, who have exhausted all their resources by getting money from their friends, family, or their savings, and cannot grow. Or, the banks would not invest in them. So, or even if they have taken a loan from the banks, the debt equity ratio has been leveled off. They cannot borrow anymore because they cannot add any more equity to their investments. Okay. Now, as I speak, I'm taking it for granted that many of you understand the vocabulary that I'm using, like debt equity ratio, etc. If you feel that you're lost, just raise your hand and I'll explain it, okay? But we'll have a Q&A sessions at the end, but I don't want this flow of what I'm talking about be amiss because of certain words that you don't understand. So we came in and our main mandate was to target the missing middle, the ones who have great ideas, who have enterprise value. Enterprise value is basically a company that already has debt or has equity and they've reached a certain level and they need further funding for scaling up. Okay, so that's where we came in. We came in and we started filtering projects. So far we have done 16 investments. We've exited 5. To arrive at those 16 investments, we went through over 2,200 companies. So the odds are huge. Okay. Now, why is this? I mean, going back, I just want to, there's evident need that SMEs, small, medium enterprises in economies like Nepal are the engines of growth. They are the backbone of any economy. And they are highly neglected because they don't have capital. But furthermore, what is important with private equity, especially with investments from, it's called DFIs, Development Finance Institutions, like the IFC, etc., like which BO2 has received money from the investors. It is a hand-holding mechanism. We believe that capital is not just enough. You need to bring technical experience, technical support to that engagement so that you help not only the enterprise but also the entrepreneur to follow international best practices. Okay, so it is an appropriate measure. I mean, 22% of our GDP is dependent on small and medium enterprise. Okay, almost 2 million people are employed in that sector. Yet, we have our government has not given it much priority. And if you really want to see impact, it is through the SMEs, because large projects take years, and they may employ X amount more, but with SMEs, you have thousands of people that are employed in a very short period of time, and the multiplier effect in the economy is enormous. Okay, so what does private equity investments mean to the economy? It's multi-pronged. On the financial performance side, the investments that we make in the companies, the IRR, internal rate of return, increases. valuation of the company increases, and their EBITDA, earning before income tax deduction and amortization, also increases. That's what we have seen. Because they follow governance, good practices. We make them follow these good practices. Normally, Nepalese businesses all have dual books of accounts. One internally and secondly for the tax man. So they don't normally pay taxes. So when we profile or when we start interviewing potential investors, what we do is we ask them, are you willing to pay taxes with our investments? Firstly, there are some who say no. They'll say, if I pay 13% VAT, that means I'm automatically going to be less competitive than my competition by 13%. Okay? If I pay corporate tax, I'll pay, again, 25% of my money goes. If I pay TDS, that's 1.5%. So we don't accommodate them. We don't invest in these companies. But the ones who say, yes, you put money in my company, I'll adhere to all of these, then we go ahead. That's the first step. Okay? Now, economic performance. New jobs are created. Okay? Sales, taxes are paid, transparency, there's compliance. In the 16 companies so far in 7 years, since our investment, 7-8 years, we have provided about $5 million to the Nepali government as in the form of taxes. Now you can imagine that if our interference had not been there, intervention had not been there, those taxes would never have been paid. And we're a small fund. We're about $15 million, not big. So if there are more companies that are invested through private equity that follow international best practices, then there's so much benefit that the economy can gain from it. Okay. Now, ESG is very important nowadays, especially in the time of climate change. And all of you have seen how violent the rains are when it comes. When it doesn't rain, it doesn't rain. It's almost like a drought. The agricultural lands are parched. We don't get water. Pollution is bad. But when it rains, it seems recently that the whole sky is about to fall on us. As a child growing up in Nepal, I never saw monsoons so violent. When it rains, it feels like the whole roof is going to be torn away. Now, these are going to affect our businesses. How do we deal with this? How do our businesses deal with the danger of climate change? I'll give you an example. We were looking at this coffee plantation, and this agriculture, the guy who owned the plantation wanted to expand. He was at 600 meters, and he wanted to buy many more hectares of land to expand his business. So what we did is we got agriculture specialists from abroad, and he spent about 8 weeks with them. At the end, he told him, look, climate change is going to change the quality of the yield of your coffee. So you need to go above 600 meters. You need to go to above 800 to 900 meters if you're going to maintain the same quality of coffee. Now, if he had not had received that advice, he would have probably gone and bought his neighbor's land at 600 meters, and he would be out of business because the quality of the yield would have been, he was exporting coffee, so he would not have been able to provide the quality that was expected of his production. So these are small things, okay? The other example is, when was it? Last year? When we had the rains and, all in Kathmandu, we had Bishnumati, Bagmati overflowing. The companies that we have invested in were affected to a certain degree who were near the river, but they had insurance. So we instill on the fact that they have the equipment insured. So it didn't matter. Insurance covered for it. Now, if normally people try to save money on the premium or, but they don't realize that these effects are going to have enormous detrimental effect on the balance sheet of the company if you do not have a foresight of dealing with it earlier. So these are the interventions that we have made. Our companies have to follow labor laws. They have to pay taxes. There has to be operation health and safety instilled in the companies. Little things like having a little fire hydrant or a little fire extinguisher in the offices. These are things that Nepalese SMEs do not consider because they have always been traditionally managed. You know, none of them would have boards. I mean, a board meeting would probably be in the kitchen table with the wife and the son, or no, and none of it would be minuted. So we instill that they should have this done. They have to have their board meetings. They have to have a chairman. They have to have members of the board, and hopefully, we also are a gender lens investor. So we instill that. Try to get women on board. Make sure that there are women in top management, in the board of the companies, etc. And besides that, we have also been actively advocating and lobbying the government for various changes. When we started Business Oxygen, there was absolutely no one knew what private equity was, especially when they thought that the World Bank Group was involved. They thought this was charity, this was grant. I mean, no matter what I say, at the end of the day, it is a finance first model. Okay? Your project has to be valuable enough to make money, and all the impact is important. But if you put $1 or a rupee in any investment, there is going to be impact. It's going to have employment. It's going to have value addition down the value chain, etc. But we use impact not as a byproduct of the investment, but as an intentionality. Now, what does that mean? That means that during the investment process, we go through where each company is different, where this company can assist in impactful growth. Okay, and that can be multi-pronged, and I'll talk about that as we move on. So we've done quite a bit. When we started, we were the only international FDI company. There was a couple local companies that were like family businesses, and there still is an offshore Mauritius-based international private equity company that does larger tickets. There were 2-3 of us when we started, but today, there are 19 that are already investing, and there are so many more. And the Security Exchange Board of Nepal has this specialized investment fund regulation that has come out that governs them. We're not a part of that because they still haven't figured out how they can accommodate foreign direct investment into private equity. So we operate as a private equity, but we're structured as an investment company under the Companies Act.